The ghost signal, the impossible detection. Deep in the void between star systems, where no ship should exist, monitoring station Kepler-7 detected something that made senior analyst Vextar's 3 hearts skip in unison. The Zephyrian Empire had maintained this listening post for over 2 centuries, tracking every vessel that moved through their territory. Nothing escaped their sensors. Nothing should have been possible to escape their sensors. Yet there it was on the holographic display, a faint energy signature moving through what spacers called dead space, the empty regions between systems where no rational being would travel. The signature was wrong in every way that mattered. Too small to be a capital ship, too large to be a fighter, moving too fast for conventional drives, too slow for jump engines, and most disturbing of all, it seemed to flicker in and out of existence as if the very fabric of space was uncertain about its presence. Vextar's elongated fingers danced across the control interface, his purple skin darkening with concentration. His species had evolved from hunters on a twilight world, and every instinct he possessed was screaming that something was terribly wrong. The readings made no sense. According to the station's computers, which had never failed in their calculations, the vessel should not exist. Supervisor Kelleroth. Vextar called across the monitoring chamber, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic undertones of his people. You need to see this immediately. Supervisor Kelleroth approached with the measured gait of someone who had seen every possible anomaly in 40 years of service. Her ancient eyes, clouded with age, but sharp with intelligence, focused on the display. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her secondary arms, which had been folded against her torso in the traditional pose of contemplation, spread wide in a gesture of profound alarm. "How long has it been moving through our space?" she asked, her voice dropping to the whisper that Zephyrians used when discussing matters of life and death. Based on trajectory analysis, Vextar replied, his own voice now trembling slightly, approximately 72 hours. It entered our territory through the nebula cluster, passed through 3 prohibited military zones, and somehow avoided detection by 14 separate monitoring stations. The implications hung in the air like a poison cloud. The Zephyrian Empire controlled over 300 star systems, protected by the most advanced sensor network in known space. Their technology was the envy of a dozen lesser species. Their military might had kept peace in this sector for generations, and yet something had been moving through their domain for 3 days without their knowledge. The first attempt. Kelleroth activated the emergency communication array, her movements swift and precise despite her age. "This is monitoring station Kepler-7, requesting immediate priority connection to Fleet Command Central." The response came within seconds, the holographic image of Fleet Admiral Zek Moore materializing above the communication console. The Admiral's scared face, marked by battles fought in the early expansion wars, showed immediate concern when he saw Kelleroth's expression. "Supervisor, your signal indicates a Code 7 emergency. What is your situation?" "Admiral, we have detected an unidentified vessel moving through our territory. The craft appears to possess stealth capabilities far beyond anything in our databases. It has been operational in our space for at least 72 hours without detection." Admiral Zek Moore's 4 eyes widened, his military bearing faltering for just a moment. "Show me." The sensor data transmitted to Fleet Command painted a picture that defied belief. The vessel's energy signature suggested advanced technology, but not of any known configuration. Its path through Zephyrian space had been deliberate, methodical, as if conducting a systematic survey of their defenses. "Has there been any attempt at communication?" the Admiral asked. "We have transmitted on all standard frequencies, including diplomatic channels. The vessel has not responded to any hails. It appears to be ignoring our presence entirely." Admiral Zek Moore's expression hardened into the mask of command that had served him through countless conflicts. "I am dispatching the 3rd Patrol Fleet to intercept. Captain Veltash will attempt peaceful contact, but if this vessel poses a threat to our territory, he has authorization to use appropriate force. The hunters become the hunted." Captain Veltash commanded the patrol cruiser Stellar Dominion with the confidence of an officer who had never known defeat. His ship and its 2 escort frigates represented the finest military technology the Zephyrian Empire could produce. Their crews were veterans of border conflicts and pirate suppression operations. They had never encountered a situation they could not handle. As the 3rd Patrol Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the intercept coordinates, Veltash studied the tactical display with growing unease. The unknown vessel hung in space exactly where the calculations had predicted, motionless as if waiting for their arrival. It appeared as a sleek shadow against the star field, its hull so dark that it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Sensor analysis, Veltash ordered, his voice crisp with authority. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the vessel's design is unlike anything in our databases. Hull composition appears to be a metallic alloy, but our scans cannot penetrate beyond the outer layer. No visible weapon systems, no apparent propulsion array. Energy readings are minimal, sir." Veltash frowned. A ship moving through space at the speeds recorded by the monitoring station should be showing massive energy signatures. Either their sensors were malfunctioning, or the vessel possessed technology that could mask its true capabilities. Communications, open a channel on all frequencies. Channel open. "Sir. Unknown vessel, you have entered Zephyrian space without authorization. Identify yourself and state your intentions, or you will be considered hostile." Silence answered them. The dark ship remained motionless, offering no response to their demands. Veltash's patience, never abundant when dealing with potential threats to his empire, began to wear thin. "Unknown vessel, this is your final warning. Respond immediately, or we will take action to defend our territory." Still nothing. The ship hung in space like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, his voice tight with confusion, "I'm detecting some kind of energy buildup from the unknown vessel. It's not like anything I've ever seen before." The demonstration. What happened next would be talked about in hushed whispers throughout the Zephyrian fleet for years to come. The unknown vessel didn't move, didn't turn, didn't even appear to power up weapon systems. One moment it was floating passively in space. The next moment the escort frigate Swift Justice simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field, no energy discharge that their sensors could detect. The frigate, with its crew of 200 experienced spacers, was there one instant and gone the next, as if it had never existed at all. Captain Veltash stared at his tactical display in horror. Where the Swift Justice had been, space showed empty. Not even the residual heat signature that should have remained after a ship's destruction. What happened to the Swift Justice?" he whispered. His tactical officer's hands shook as he worked his console. "Sir, I don't know. One moment it was there. The next, sensors show no trace of it. No explosion, no debris, no energy discharge. It's as if the ship never existed." The bridge of the Stellar Dominion fell into the silence of absolute terror. Every officer present had served in combat, had seen ships destroyed by enemy fire, had witnessed the violence of space warfare, but they had never seen anything like this. The complete and total erasure of a vessel, and its crew defied every law of physics they understood. "Sir," the communications officer called out, his voice barely above a whisper, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was human, speaking in perfect Zephyrian, with just enough accent to make it clear that this was not the speaker's native tongue. The tone was calm, almost conversational, which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. "Zephyrian vessels, you have witnessed a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. Your escort ship has been relocated to a position approximately 10,000 kilometers from your current location. The crew is unharmed, but will remain unconscious for several hours. Consider this a warning about the consequences of aggressive action." Captain Veltash's mind reeled. Relocated. The Swift Justice had been moved. His sensors showed nothing but navigation, scan coordinates bearing 27 Mark 15, distance 10,000 kilometers. A moment later, the impossible was confirmed. The Swift Justice hung in space exactly where the human voice had indicated, dark and lifeless but intact. Subsequent scans would reveal that every member of the crew was alive but unconscious, with no memory of what had happened to them. The message. The human voice continued, still calm, still terrifyingly polite. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Phantom Walker. For the past several months, my ship has been conducting reconnaissance of this sector in response to several unprovoked attacks on human shipping by vessels flying Zephyrian identification codes. Veltash found his voice, though it came out as little more than a croak. Commander Chen, I have no knowledge of any attacks on human vessels. If there have been incidents involving ships with our identification, they were not authorized by our government. That may be true, Captain. However, the attacks occurred, and they occurred using your technology and your identification codes. 3 human merchant vessels were destroyed, with the loss of over 200 civilian lives. My government takes a dim view of such actions. The weight of the situation began to settle on Veltash's shoulders. Humans. The stories about them were contradictory and often dismissed as exaggeration. Some claimed they were primitive savages from a backwater world. Others whispered of their terrifying ingenuity and refusal to surrender even in hopeless situations. But all the stories agreed on one thing. You did not want to make enemies of humans. Commander, I assure you that the Zephyrian Empire has no official policy of aggression toward human shipping. If rogue elements have committed these acts, we will investigate and take appropriate action. I hope that is true, Captain. However, my orders are clear. I am to continue my reconnaissance mission and report on Zephyrian military capabilities. Your arrival has provided useful data in that regard. The implications of that statement chilled Veltash to his core. This single human ship had demonstrated the ability to disable his vessels without apparent effort, to move through Zephyrian space undetected, and to gather intelligence on their military capabilities. If this was just one ship, what could a fleet of them do? The spreading panic. News of the encounter spread through the Zephyrian fleet like wildfire. Within hours, every monitoring station, every patrol ship, every military installation was on high alert. The story grew with each telling, becoming more terrifying with each repetition. A human vessel that could appear and disappear at will. Technology that could make entire ships vanish without a trace. A species that had been quietly watching and learning while the Zephyrians remained unaware. Back at monitoring station Kepler 7, Supervisor Kelleroth watched the tactical displays with growing dread. The Phantom Walker had vanished from their sensors shortly after the encounter with Captain Veltash's patrol fleet. But the implications of its presence remained. If one human ship could penetrate their defenses so easily, how many others might be out there, moving unseen through their territory? Admiral Zekmore's emergency conference included every senior officer in the fleet. The holographic images of captains and commodores filled the command center, their faces showing the strain of an impossible situation. Gentlemen, the Admiral began, we are facing a threat unlike anything we have encountered before. The humans have demonstrated technology that exceeds our current understanding. More disturbing, they have been operating in our space for an extended period without our knowledge. Captain Veltash, still shaken from his encounter, provided his report in a voice that barely held steady. Admiral, the human vessel displayed capabilities that defy our understanding of physics. They moved our escort ship 10,000 kilometers in an instant, without apparent harm to the crew, and without any energy signature that our sensors could detect. What are your recommendations, Captain? Veltash hesitated, the weight of his next words heavy on his conscience. Sir, I recommend immediate diplomatic contact with the human government. We need to resolve this situation before it escalates beyond our ability to control. The Admiral nodded grimly. Agreed. However, our attempts to contact Earth have been unsuccessful. It appears the humans are not interested in diplomatic solutions at this time. A young Commodore, his uniform marking him as an intelligence officer, spoke up. "Admiral, our analysis of the encounter suggests that this was not an act of aggression, but rather a message. The humans could have destroyed Captain Veltash's entire patrol fleet, but they chose instead to demonstrate their capabilities while minimizing casualties." "Your point, Commodore. They want us to know they are watching. They want us to understand that our military superiority is not as absolute as we believed. And most importantly, they want us to be afraid." The silence that followed that statement was profound. Fear was not an emotion that Zephyrian military officers were accustomed to experiencing. They were the hunters, the apex predators of their region of space. But now, for the first time in generations, they had encountered something that hunted them. The reckoning. The investigation. In the deep chambers beneath Zephyrian Fleet Command, teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock to understand the technology that had so thoroughly humiliated their military. Dr. Kexnall, the Empire's leading expert in exotic physics, stared at the sensor readings from the encounter with the human vessel until his eyes burned from strain. "It's impossible," he muttered for the 100th time, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he spoke to his assembled team. The energy requirements alone should have been detectable from 3 star systems away. To move a vessel of that mass instantaneously across 10,000 kilometers of space should have created gravitational waves that would have shattered every piece of equipment on our ships. His assistant, a younger scientist named Yordell, looked up from her own calculations with a troubled expression. "Doctor, what if they didn't move the ship through space? What if they moved space around the ship?" Dr. Kexnall's primary eyes fixed on her with the intensity of a predator focusing on prey. "Explain." The readings show no evidence of traditional propulsion, no energy discharge consistent with known physics, but there were minute fluctuations in the fabric of space-time itself. What if the humans have developed a way to manipulate dimensional boundaries, to fold space in such a way that 2 distant points become adjacent? The implications of such technology sent a chill through every scientist in the room. The ability to manipulate space-time itself would represent a level of scientific advancement that the Zephyrian Empire, for all their pride, had barely begun to theorize about. "If that's true," Dr. Kexnall said slowly, "then we are not dealing with a militarily superior force. We are dealing with a technologically superior civilization that has been allowing us to believe we were the dominant power in this region." The hunt for answers. Meanwhile, deep in the intelligence archives, analyst Mektor made a discovery that would change everything. Buried in reports dating back over 50 years were references to strange phenomena that had been dismissed as sensor glitches or natural anomalies. Ships that had reported brief contact with unknown vessels. Monitoring stations that had detected energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Trade routes where merchant vessels had reported the feeling of being watched by unseen observers. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Humans had been active in Zephyrian space for decades, conducting what could only be described as the most thorough reconnaissance operation in galactic history. They had been watching, learning, cataloging every aspect of Zephyrian military and civilian operations. Mektor's hands trembled as he compiled his report for Admiral Zekmor. The humans hadn't just recently decided to investigate Zephyrian space. They had been conducting a systematic intelligence-gathering operation for longer than most current officers had been in service. The Phantom Walker wasn't a scout ship exploring unknown territory. It was the culmination of decades of careful observation and analysis. "Admiral," Mektor said as he presented his findings, "the evidence suggests that humans have been studying us for at least 50 years. Every major military exercise, every new weapon system, every tactical doctrine we've developed has likely been observed and analyzed by human intelligence." Admiral Zekmor's scarred face showed no emotion, but those who knew him could see the tension in his posture. "How many ships do you estimate they have in our territory?" Based on the patterns of observation and the geographical distribution of anomalous events, I would estimate at least 12 vessels operating in our space at any given time, possibly more. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 12 human ships, each potentially as capable as the Phantom Walker, had been moving through Zephyrian space undetected for decades. The implications for military security were staggering. The fleet assembles. Admiral Zekmor's response was swift and decisive. If the humans wanted to demonstrate their technological superiority, he would show them that the Zephyrian Empire would not be intimidated. He assembled the largest fleet in the Empire's history. 200 of their most advanced warships, including the massive dreadnought Emperor's Will and its escort of heavy cruisers and destroyers. The fleet gathered at the edge of the system where the Phantom Walker had last been detected. Sensor arrays swept the surrounding space, looking for any trace of the human vessel. Advanced detection equipment, hastily modified based on analysis of the previous encounter, probed the dimensional boundaries that Dr. Kecksnell's team believed the humans might be manipulating. Captain Veltash, now promoted to Commodore in recognition of his survival of the first contact, commanded one of the heavy cruiser squadrons. The memory of watching the swift Justice simply vanish haunted his dreams, but he had volunteered for this mission nonetheless. If the Empire was going to confront the humans, he wanted to be there. All ships report ready, Admiral, the fleet communications officer announced. Admiral Zekmor stood on the bridge of the Emperor's Will, looking out at the assembled might of his civilization. 200 warships, crews totaling over 500,000 beings, weapons capable of sterilizing entire worlds. Surely, even with their advanced technology, the humans would be impressed by such a display of force. Attention all vessels, he broadcast to the fleet. We are here to send a message to the humans. They have operated in our space without authorization for too long. They have demonstrated hostile capabilities against our ships. Today, we show them that the Zephyrian Empire will not be intimidated by any force, no matter how advanced their technology might be. The challenge. The Admiral's words had barely finished echoing through the fleet communications when sensors across the entire task force lit up with contact alerts. The Phantom Walker had appeared, materializing in the exact center of the Zephyrian formation as if it had always been there. The human vessel hung motionless among the massive warships like a predator that had chosen to reveal itself to its prey. "How?" whispered the sensor operator on the Emperor's Will. "How did it get past our detection grid?" Admiral Zekmor recovered his composure quickly, his years of command experience taking over. "Open a channel to the human vessel. This is Admiral Zekmor of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are surrounded by 200 warships. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." The response came in the same calm, terrifyingly polite voice that Captain Veltash remembered from his encounter. "Admiral Zekmor, I am Commander Sarah Chen. I appreciate the effort you've put into assembling this impressive fleet. However, I think there may be some confusion about the tactical situation." Before the Admiral could respond, every weapon system in the fleet simultaneously powered down. Not damaged, not destroyed, but simply deactivated as if someone had thrown a switch. 200 warships, the pride of the Zephyrian Empire, had been rendered harmless in an instant. "As you can see," Commander Chin continued, "your weapons are currently non-functional. This is a temporary measure designed to prevent any unfortunate accidents during our conversation. I assure you that your crews are in no danger." The bridge of the Emperor's Will erupted in controlled chaos as officers tried to understand what had happened. Chief Engineer Roltam's report was grim. "Admiral, every weapon system shows as offline. I'm reading no damage, no power failures, nothing. It's as if the weapons simply don't exist anymore." Admiral Zekmor felt the foundation of his understanding of the universe crumble beneath him. The humans hadn't destroyed his fleet's weapons or damaged their ships. They had simply turned them off as easily as one might extinguish a light. The revelation. Commander Chen's voice filled the bridge again, still calm but now carrying an undertone that suggested the conversation was approaching its conclusion. "Admiral, I believe there are several things you need to understand about the current situation. First, what you see before you is not a human invasion fleet. I am alone." The words hit Admiral Zekmor like a physical blow. One ship, one human vessel had neutralized the largest fleet in Zephyrian history. Second, the commander continued, "Your empire has been under observation by human intelligence for several decades. We know the location of every military installation, every hidden base, every weapons research facility. We know your tactical doctrines, your communication codes, and your strategic plans." Commodore Veltash, listening to the conversation from his cruiser's bridge, felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. The humans had been playing a game that the Zephyrians hadn't even known was being played. Third, and most importantly, the attacks on human shipping that brought me here were indeed carried out by vessels using Zephyrian identification codes and Zephyrian technology. Our investigation has determined that these were not rogue elements acting without authorization. They were pirates who had purchased decommissioned Zephyrian military equipment from corrupt officials within your own government. The accusation hung in the space between the fleets like a poison cloud. Admiral Zekmor knew it was true. The military's old equipment disposal program had been plagued by corruption for years, with decommissioned vessels sold to the highest bidder with minimal oversight. The families of the 200 humans who died in those attacks deserve justice, Admiral. My government has decided that the most appropriate response is to ensure that such incidents cannot happen again. The ultimatum. Your terms. Admiral Zekmor asked, his voice heavy with the weight of inevitable defeat. The Zephyrian Empire will implement immediate reforms to your equipment disposal procedures. All sales of military hardware to non-governmental entities will cease immediately. Reparations will be paid to the families of the human victims. And finally, the Zephyrian Empire will acknowledge human territorial claims in the disputed systems along our mutual border. The terms were harsh but not impossible. Admiral Zekmor had expected demands for territorial concessions or tribute payments. Instead, the humans wanted justice for their dead and assurance that similar incidents would not occur in the future. "And if we refuse?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Admiral, I think you understand your situation. 200 of your finest warships are currently helpless. Their weapons will remain offline until I choose to restore them. I could, if I wished, disable your engines as well, leaving your fleet stranded in empty space. I could target your life support systems, your communications, your navigation. I could make this entire fleet simply disappear, just as your Commodore Veltash saw happen to the Swift Justice." The threat was delivered in the same calm tone, making it infinitely more terrifying. This human had the power to annihilate the entire Zephyrian fleet, and they both knew it. However, Commander Chen continued, "My orders are to resolve this situation with minimal loss of life. I am authorized to accept your agreement to our terms and withdraw from Zephyrian space. Your weapons will be restored once you have transmitted formal acceptance of our conditions to your government." Admiral Zekmor closed his eyes, feeling the weight of centuries of Zephyrian military pride crumbling around him. "I accept your terms, Commander Chen." The truth revealed. As the Phantom Walker prepared to depart, Commander Chen offered one final piece of information that would haunt the Zephyrian Empire for generations to come. "Admiral, before I leave, I thought you should know that Earth has 14 vessels of the Phantom Walker class currently in service. 9 of them are operating in various sectors of the galaxy, conducting similar reconnaissance and peacekeeping missions. The remaining 5 are stationed in Earth's home system, serving as planetary defense platforms." The implication was clear. The vessel that had humiliated the entire Zephyrian fleet was not unique. It was one of many, part of a human military force that could project power across the galaxy at will. "Sleep well, Admiral," Commander Chen said. "And remember that the next time someone suggests that humans are primitive or weak, you have seen the truth. We have been watching you for 50 years, learning your strengths and weaknesses, preparing for the day when we might need to act. Today was that day. I hope there will not be another." The Phantom Walker vanished from sensors as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving the Zephyrian fleet alone in empty space with their weapons slowly coming back online and their understanding of the universe forever changed. The new reality. In the days that followed, the Zephyrian Empire struggled to come to terms with their new place in the galactic order. The humans had not conquered them, had not demanded tribute or subjugation. Instead, they had simply demonstrated that the balance of power was not what the Zephyrians had believed it to be. Admiral Zekmor submitted his report to the Imperial Council with hands that shook slightly from the memory of absolute helplessness. The Council, for their part, received the news with the stoic dignity that their species was known for, but privately, each member grappled with the terrifying realization that their empire existed at the sufferance of beings they had barely considered worthy of notice. The reforms were implemented swiftly. The equipment disposal program was completely overhauled, with strict oversight and accountability measures. Reparations were paid to the human families, though no amount of money could truly compensate for their loss. The disputed territories were quietly ceded to human control, with official statements citing mutual agreement in the interest of peaceful relations. But perhaps the most significant change was in the Zephyrian mindset. The empire that had once seen itself as the dominant power in their region of space now understood that they were merely one player in a much larger game. The humans had shown them that true power was not just about the size of your fleet or the destructive capacity of your weapons. It was about knowledge, about patience, about the ability to act decisively when action was required. The legacy. Years later, when young Zephyrian officers asked about the incident that changed their empire's relationship with humanity, Admiral Zekmor would tell them about the day when one human ship taught an entire civilization about the true nature of power. He would speak of Commander Sarah Chen's calm voice delivering terms that could not be refused, of weapons that simply stopped working, of the terrible realization that they had been observed and analyzed for decades without their knowledge. The humans, he would say, are not like us. They do not seek to dominate through fear or conquest. They prefer to remain in the shadows, watching and learning, acting only when they must. But when they do act, they do so with a precision and capability that renders resistance futile. The story of the Phantom Walker became legend throughout the Zephyrian Empire, a reminder that the universe was far more complex and dangerous than they had ever imagined. And somewhere in the depths of space, other human vessels continued their silent vigil, watching over a galaxy that was slowly learning to respect the quiet species from the small blue world on the edge of known space. The age of human dominance had begun not with conquest or war, but with a simple demonstration of capability and a calm voice offering terms that could not be refused. The galaxy would never be the same.